So today's guest on Five Questions is Julie Alig. Julie is the founder of GLA Analytics in New Hampshire. So Julie, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, David.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about your background and what GLA Analytics does?
Happy to. So I am, at heart, I'm basically a storyteller. As I look back, I really have been always interested in stories. It was in grad school that I really got interested a lot more in data and using data and marrying that with stories to be able to really have an impact. I went to University of Chicago. I got my doctorate in political science. I did a lot of work in quantitative methods, survey research, that sort of thing, because what I really wanted to do was be able to understand how to use data and how to use it in a very honest, methodologically rigorous way so that people what the story is in it, and then not just kind of understand what the story is, but be able to figure out what do we do with that? Where do we go next? And so what my company does is work with clients that have a lot of data and they don't know what story it's telling. And they need someone with the tools and the expertise to come in and work with them and figure out what's going on and plot a course for going forward.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this conversation because storytelling with data is something that I was having conversations with my team last week, as I was just alluding to. So before we delve into that, so who is GLA Analytics? Who's your ideal customer?
That's a good question. There is no one ideal customer, I would say, David. As I was thinking about this, and I get asked that a lot, as I'm seeing my customer base, my client base, it's not in just one industry. I'm seeing customers from different industries. I'm also seeing customers, some of them are very small businesses, maybe even family-owned small businesses. But then I've got customers that I'm working with that have, operating budgets of $10 million. So it's really not so much, I'm finding, the differentiator is not so much the industry or anything like that. It's much more the mindset, and the mindset that we have all this data and we don't quite know how to use it to our competitive advantage. And we're willing to take the plunge, right? To learn something and figure out what exactly is going on in the data. We might not like what we see. And you know what? But that's powerful too, because at least you know it. And from there, you can go on. So my ideal client is someone like that, someone who is willing to trust the numbers, but also to keep a healthy skepticism about what the numbers are saying.
Great. With COVID-19, there's just so much data that's out there. And I see politicians and scientists and Twitter people who pretend that they're both try to explain this really complex math around these models and being able to tell a story. I think Kumo out of New York has done a really good job to sort of condense it down into that. Most people are not. What are people missing? Is sort of when you have a complex data set and you have complex data, what are some of the tips, tactics that people can use to sort of take that and be able to tell a story around it that people understand?
Are you talking from, if I were someone with a complex data set, how would I go about communicating?
Sure. Yeah.
So honestly, anyone can throw a complex data set. You can answer a whole lot of questions and you can do a lot of really fun stuff, right? So I think we all, are pretty aware of all of the powerful machine learning algorithms out there of, a lot of this very, 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 very complex, these statistical analyses. I find, honestly, that if you can't tell a story, even if it's a complex story, if you can't tell it in a very simple kind of way, that what good is it? I mean, you might have all of this data, you might have these really cool hierarchical clustering algorithms or whatever you call it, logistic regression or whatever. But if you can't get down to that question that your customer or your client has, if you can't answer that, I mean, what good is it? So I kind of think of it like, really, that's where thinking of this in terms of telling a story helps me, and I think it helps other people also, to think about breaking that down. And I think the first thing you need to do is, when you're, as a practitioner, right, when you start having a conversation or something about a really complex topic, is make sure you find a common basis of understanding with your audience, with your client. Because if you don't have that common basis, that foundation from the get-go, you've lost them. It doesn't matter, how great your R squared is, or, this, that, the other. It's over their head and you've lost. And what good is it then? So I really try to stay true to what the original questions were, and really think about how someone is going to use the data, and try to, we all fall into these traps of going off on tangents or going down rabbit holes. Really, for me, it really is, this whole process of analysis is really iterative, coming back to the questions, doing, answering a few more questions, coming up with a few more findings, and then going back and iterating and seeing how much more of the story, almost like a palimpsest, that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I find a lot of times is that the analysts that we work with, or I've seen, they're so focused on being that, shown that they're the smartest one in the room, that they just go really deep, and they lose everybody. Because yes, they are the smartest one, because they own the data. But you have to be able to, as you said, bring that up to that story point at the top that says, these are the terms that we can all understand.
Yep.
And this is the story part that's around that. And it's powerful when it works. It's a really tough meeting when it doesn't. And when you go,
yes.
you go too far with that.
Yes. And, I'm, full disclosure here, I've been doing this for, 20, 25 years. I was a young analyst, way back in the day. And there is something really cool about when you're able to find something, where you're able to dig and dig and dig, and you're able to come up with something, you get excited about it and you do want to share it. Right. So I'm sure I've been guilty of that in the past. But, you need to come back to, okay, so what? What are we going to do with this? Does it really answer the question? And if it doesn't, well, okay, let's stick a pin in it, stick it over here in the parking lot, and let's get back to the question at hand. And how can we really, really help the client or the customer to make a difference?
Totally agree.